After the episode on Arab enslavement, some viewers have wondered why the enslaved Africans did not resist. Well, they did. This episode will highlight the Zanj Revolt, one of the bravest and longest rebellions of enslaved Africans in history. Welcome to the Sankofa Pan-African series. Please support us through Patreon and by buying me coffee so we can continue to bring you this series. Subscribe if you haven't done so. And then please turn on your notification button so you know when we have new episodes. Of course, share our videos with all your contacts. So, who were the Zanj? There are a number of positions on the origin and meaning of the word Zanj. Some scholars claim that it is an Ethiopian word which describes areas south of Abyssinia and along the east coast of Africa. Others claim it is of Persian origin, derived from the word Zang or Zangi, which means Negro. Others insist that the word was used to describe African people who were brought together after being abducted along the east coast of Africa. One point, though, that is not disputable about the Zanj people is the way that they were treated in the area where most of them ended up after enslavement. So the people known as Zanj ended up in areas which fall under modern-day Iraq and a section of Iran, Khuzestan. Now, two of the regions in which they found themselves were Batiha and Maysan in lower Iraq's Canal region. Alexander Popovic, a scholar, notes that the nature of soil in the areas was marshy and flooded with mud, and that the Zanj were made to work in extremely brutal climates that were malaria-infested swamps. Many of them perished as a result of the conditions under which they were forced to live in filthy huts that were built from reeds and palm leaves. The Zanj were made to dig ditches in order to drain overgrown marshlands in an effort to clean salt flats and extract salt from seawater. They were also forced to work on cotton and sugarcane plantations. Like the Europeans, who needed to justify slavery by claiming that black people were subhuman, it is apparent that the Arabs also treated the Zanj as less than human. This is apparent from the way they were described by Arab scholars like Kazaouni, who wrote that they were people with fetid odor, limited intelligence, extreme exuberance, and cannibalistic customs. Another writer, Masudi, records that they had smelly skin, excessive petulance, sparse eyebrows, and highly developed sexual organs. Even as recently as in the 14th century, an Arab writer, Al-Baqi, wrote that the Zanj are characterized by their odor, their quickness to anger, their lack of intellect, their habit of eating one another and their enemies. One Arab scholar, Al-Kindi, goes so far as to try and explain why they were less than human by claiming that the hot climate in the land of the Zanj made their brain to lose its balance. He goes further to say this was responsible for their lack of any form of intelligence. In spite of the wealth that the Zanj generated for their Muslim, Arab, and sometimes Persian owners through all this inhumane labor, they were only given a few handfuls of flour, semolina, and a few dates to keep them alive. However, rather than allow all this break their spirits, the condition under which they lived and worked helped them to forge a strong group spirit. The group spirit helped them to develop a consciousness of the power in their number, which was quite large. And this is a lesson that Africans today and our Pan-African brothers and sisters in the diaspora need to learn. There is strength in our numbers. Anyway, so dehumanized and underfed, the Zen decided enough was enough, and they expressed their resentment through rebellions. The first recorded rebellion by the Zanj took place in 689 AD, but it was quickly suppressed by the Caliphal forces. They rose again 5 years later when they were led by one of them named Ria, who was also known as the Lion of the Zanj. This rebellion attracted many followers and succeeded in defeating the government forces. The Zanj almost captured the Euphrates, but they were eventually overwhelmed by the might of the Caliphal army. As more slaves were brought in from East Africa, the Zanj's resentment continued to grow and fester. And in September 869 AD, a Persian, Ali ibn Muhammad, who claimed to be descended from Ali, a cousin of the Prophet Muhammad, who was also the Prophet's son-in-law, joined forces with the Zanj in a bid to stake a claim to the Caliphate. Ali ibn Muhammad appealed to the Zanj by promising them their freedom if they helped him to seize control of the Caliphate. He went as far as to urge them to kill him if he betrayed them. He also assured them that it was not for his own wealth and gain that he started this rebellion. He swore that none of them would ever again be returned to their former masters. Whatever his motivation was, the Zanj agreed to join forces with him to gain their freedom. Ali ibn Muhammad then made Suleiman ibn Jami, a black man, his general. Together, they then commenced recruiting a formidable army of black men to form the Zanj soldiers. Other notable black men in the rebellious army were Rayhan and Rafiq. The army went from place to place, freeing enslaved Zanjs. The rebellion quickly gained momentum and continued to grow in strength as more slaves were liberated. By the end of the first year of the revolt, about 15,000 slaves had been freed and they all joined the rebel army. Although poorly equipped, the Zanj, who were desperate for their freedom, confronted and defeated an imperial troop of 4,000 well-armed soldiers. Also, as a result of their victories, the Zanj captured weapons and other supplies like horses and food. Now, if you watched our episode on Afro-Arabs, you will recall that the Arabs used most of the enslaved African men in the Caliphal army. You will also recall that the men were castrated because the Arabs believed that castrated men made better soldiers. Well, some of the sources of the Zanj, some of the success of the Zen Revolt was because enslaved African men in the Caliphate's army deserted their masters and joined their brothers in the revolt to fight against the Caliphate. The Zanj rebels were joined by fleeing slaves at every opportunity. Their army was composed of three corps: a navy, an infantry, and a cavalry. They were not just an army of brave men, but they were highly disciplined and had excellent leadership and quickly developed excellent fighting tactics. Apparently, these enslavers who had written them off as people without intelligence must have underestimated them grossly. Their success was also due to their familiarity with the environment in which they had been kept enslaved. The Zanj knew how to survive and fight in the marshes and canals, and they took full advantage of their knowledge for their guerrilla warfare, shielded by highly overgrown reeds. They also carried out night attacks and made many successful raids on the Caliphate's large cavalry that was then made up predominantly of Turks after the mass desertion by the Africans. Even the women joined the men, and the imperial forces were successfully ambushed time and time again. At the height of the rebellion, on the 7th of September 871 AD, the Zanj succeeded in capturing a major city called Basra and several surrounding villages. They set the city on fire after destroying it. The Zanj then cut off Baghdad's supplies from the south and started intercepting ships on the Tigris. They also captured the city of Wasit in 879 AD before extending their territory northward from southern Iraq to within 70 miles of Baghdad. The Zen actually succeeded in establishing their own capital city, Al-Mukhtara, which means city of the elect. David Bryan Davis suggests that Al-Mukhtara was probably the first Maroon community in recorded history. It was located south of Basra on the west bank of the Tigris and was intersected by the Abil Kasib Canal. To secure the city, the Zanj built a large iron chain and two huge barriers which were used to close the entrance of the canal, which was then divided by two bridges. They installed catapults on walls which surrounded the city. They also built houses made of bricks and baked clay, a mosque, a prison, and several markets in their capital city. For several years, the Zanj were settled enough in their city of the elect that they were even minting their own currency. Having their own currency improved their ability to trade with surrounding communities, including Bedouin merchants with whom they traded agricultural produce, fruits, cattle, and fish. Unfortunately, it was their dependence on trading for things that they could not produce that the Caliphate capitalized on to eventually defeat them. In 880, the Caliphal army, equipped with a large river fleet, including decked ships, barges, and open boats, were able to penetrate through the channels and canals to the stronghold of the Zanj. They hauled molten lead at the Zanj fortresses and used fire ships against the bridges. Next, they seized the Bedouin merchants who supplied the Zanj, thereby cutting off their resources. The imperial army then blockaded and cut off their trade and their communication access. Initially, the Caliphal army was only able to seize the entire Zanj enclave with the exception of the capital, which remained impregnable. And the Zanj endured Caliphal attacks for years, and it took an army of 50,000 men to take the Zanj capital city. Ali ibn Muhammad was captured, beheaded, and his head was sent to Baghdad for presentation to the Caliph. The Zen Revolt, which had terrorized Iraq and undermined the Abbasid Empire for nearly 15 years, was finally suppressed. The final siege of the Zanj capital at Al-Mukhtara took more than 3 years before it was breached, and the Caliph's armies were finally triumphant. Now, the fact that the Abbasid Empire, the strongest administrative system in the Muslim world, struggled for 15 years to suppress the Zen Revolt illustrates the massive nature of the insurrection as well as the resolve of the Zen freedom fighters. Other than the Haitian revolution, no other slave revolt by Africans has proved to be as successful as the events that took place in the late 9th century. One positive outcome of the Zen Revolt is that large-scale plantation slavery was never again practiced in the Arab world, and Basra and southern Iraq fell into decline because the revolt paralyzed the trade and commerce and exposed the weakness of the political and military system of the Caliphate. Thanks for watching. Please support us through Patreon and by buying me coffee so we can continue to bring you this series. Subscribe if you have not yet done so, and click on your notification buttons. Also, don't forget to share our videos with all your contacts and keep those comments coming. Thank you.